Thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate that. Thanks, Margaret, for hosting, and to Jennifer with the CHNEP for hosting the event today. Can everyone hear me? Is this working? Okay. And want to say a special thanks to the event center here for allowing us to use this great facility today. So what we're going to talk about today, just as a way of introduction, my name is Greg Viday. I'm the Economic Development Representative for the state of Florida for EDA, for Commerce's Economic Development Administration. What does that mean? That means when we talk about projects and programs and funding opportunities, I'm going to be your primary point of contact for those discussions. I am here not just because in my disaster role, but I also serve as the Blue Sky representative for EDA. So I have constant communications with communities across Florida to help them advance their economies. So what we're focused on today is essentially long-term economic recovery and resiliency, and I'm going to speak more about that, to break down what I mean by that. So we're going to be focused on that, and underpinning economic recovery and resiliency, of course, is natural resources, infrastructure, housing, small business development, economic development, all the issues that we're going to be addressing today in the moderated discussions, and I will help with some of those moderated discussions and play a facilitation role. But before I get into the workshop purpose, I want to introduce my colleague Milton Cochran, who will be introducing the federal partners that we have, federal and state partners that we have here today, to talk to you about their various programs and opportunities to share with you all. So Milton.
Thank you a lot, Greg. Can you hear me okay, everyone? Can you hear me? Yes. Yes, great. Before I get started with the introductions of our federal and state partners, I would like to ask our FDRC letter to come up and speak on behalf of FEMA.
Thank you, Milton. Good morning, everybody. My name is Leda Curry, and I'm serving as the Federal Disaster Recovery Coordinator for the disaster of Helene and Milton. And I joined Greg to welcome you to have this session. And it's definitely, from FEMA's standpoint, it's a great, I would say, privilege to work along with a great partner, EDA, along with our other federal partners as part of the Interagency Recovery Coordination. It's certainly our goal, as Greg pointed out, to hear what is the main issues that you have. And our goal as part of the Interagency Recovery Coordination is to work very closely with EDA being the lead for the many aspects when it comes to development, economic development, which ties into many other aspects of the long-term recovery. When we talk about infrastructure, when we talk about health and educational services, and we do have several of our federal partners who are part of the IRC who are not in person this morning, but they're also joining us virtually. So again, we are one family that are looking to hear what are some of the issues that you're facing to then determine how can we be that support to your communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leda, for those great remarks and for your leadership of this mission and for your being with us today. As the field coordinator for the Economic Recovery Support Function serving Florida in the aftermath of Hurricanes Debbie, Helene, and Milton, at the request of FEMA, it is my honor to be a part of the FEMA and the state team as we together work toward helping Florida's community build a stronger future. In addition to serving as the field coordinator, I represent the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration, that is EDA, as the Economic Development Integrator for the 8 southeastern states, including Florida. In this role, I work to connect communities and state leaders with federal resources, not just available through EDA and our home agency, the U.S. Department of Commerce, but all the federal agencies with resources to bear which come with a focus on economic development. This is very much in line with the mission of the Econ Recovery Support Function. I would like to thank Margaret and the Southwest Regional Planning Council team for their partnership in bringing us all together. And we are so grateful that Charlotte Harbor Event and Conference Center are hosting us today. We have a robust agenda this morning, today, beginning with listening to you. The purpose of today's engagement is to gather and validate information regarding the impacts and the issues due to the hurricanes, identify resources needed to address unmet needs, connect you to relevant federal and state programs and contacts for advanced and long-term recovery resiliency. And before we conclude our time today, we look forward to exploring your ideas for potential projects that will make a difference for this region. I look forward to a robust discussion and exchange of ideas for how to help Southwest Florida's communities not only recover from the 2024 storm season, but also to build a more resilient future. I would like to point out that we have several representatives of federal, state, and regional agencies charged with distributing important resources who have joined us today in this mission and to serve you, many of whom are with us today in the room and others online. At this time, I'd like to ask to go ahead and ask each of our partners introduce themselves. Great if you could just state your name, your agency, and 1 or 2 sentences about the resources that your agencies can bring to help foster economic recovery. I'm just going to go down the list real quickly. Actually, if we'll start with the Health and Human Services, and from there, we'll just go ahead and introduce those federal and state agencies that's on the call. So Paul, if you can get started.
Thanks, Milton. So I'm Paul Myers. I'm with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Disaster Recovery Team. I'm the Health, Education, and Human Services, RSF, or Recovery Support Function Field Coordinator, and I support the Human Services branch of the Florida Division of Emergency Management under a FEMA mission assignment. We have 5 core mission areas, and those are behavioral health, environmental health and public health, human services, healthcare systems, and education. Our primary support is to the Florida Division of Emergency Management, and I'll hand the mic over in case there is anyone from the state who wants to report out from HEHS. If there isn't, Milton, I'll hand back over to you.
Thanks, Paul. EPA, if you want. HSS, excuse me, HUD.
Hi, this is Matthew Applegate with HUD in the Housing RSF, and I'm joined here with Kelsey Brown.
Hi, Kelsey Brown, also with the Housing RSF. We are working to gather both quantitative and qualitative data and engage with stakeholders to really understand what the recovery challenges are. So we're happy to be here today. Thank you.
As you're introducing yourself, if you could speak as loud as you can, we're having a little audio difficulties hearing you here in the room. Is the Army Corps engineer representative there?
I'll just talk really loud. You guys hear me? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Hello, my name is Bree McGuffey. I'm with the Army Corps of Engineers. I'm acting as the Infrastructure Systems Recovery Support Function Field Coordinator. So I am here to listen and see what possible or potential resources that the Corps has. The Corps has some 50-50 cost share programs, some 100% funded technical assistance, floodplain management, and other things that could potentially assist with some needs. So yeah,
Thanks.
Also, I'd note that I am a Florida native. I live in Fort Myers, and I had tornado damage from Milton, so completely empathize with everyone here.
Thank you. Dr. Carter, what we have you here?
Hi, I'm Brendan Carter. I work for the National Park Service, but I also work as the Natural and Cultural Resource Liaison for FEMA on disasters. We cover a number of different things. We have planning assistance through the Rivers Trails Conservation Assistance Program. We also, if you all recall, the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is funded by offshore drilling revenues, has been fully funded. So if you have parks or park planning needs, funding assistance is available for those. Typically a state request or a municipality request that's funneled through the state program is a 50% match, and RTCA, Rivers Trails Conservation Association, technical assistance is typically free for municipalities and local governments. And I'll just say, I've worked hurricanes since Katrina, including Ian, which Ian was probably worse than Milton in terms of flooding and damage. But you know, every hurricane is like a reminder that, you know, we need to up our game if we're going to live in this great state. And I'm a Florida native as well. I grew up in DeLand, just north of here. And I've also dived in Little Salt Spring, if anybody knows where that is. So,
Thanks a lot, Dr. Carter. FEMA CA, field coordinator is online.
Actually, I'm here.
There we are.
I'm Jim Corcoran. I'm the Deputy Field Coordinator for Community Assistance. Thank you. Community Assistance works hand in hand with the state, and we provide support to local governments by building relationships, providing training and supporting efforts to plan, prioritize, and implement local recovery plans.
Sounds great. And while we're talking with folks from FEMA is, thanks, is our hazard mitigation advisor on from FEMA on the call. I bring her out specifically because of the severe flooding in this area, and I want to make sure she had an opportunity to introduce her. So, are there other federal partners on the call that haven't called yet?
The Small Business Administration.
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Small Business Administration. Did you want me to go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Tahita Mateen. I'm a public affairs specialist with the Small Business Administration. As far as the Small Business Administration, SBA, we are considered the largest source of federal funding during disasters. Our recovery assistance comes in the form of low-interest disaster loans to businesses of any size, homeowners, renters, nonprofit, and private organizations. We also can help those people who were approved with mitigation funding as well. So it doesn't have to be the mitigation that's the same disaster. So if you're looking to raise your structure, you're looking to put a sump pump in, you are looking for hurricane-proof windows, please, submit your application, get approved, and ask for those mitigation funds. Right now, we are still accepting applications throughout this 60-day grace period. We continue to encourage survivors in your communities to apply. And if there's any further questions, I would be happy to answer at the end of the call. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's Noah on, someone from Noah?
I don't see anyone from NOAA, but there are definitely some more federal partners that have introduced themselves.
Okay, would you?
Hi, this is USDA.
Okay, Ron Uba.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead?
Good morning. This is Ron Uba. I'm with the U.S. Department of Commerce with the Minority Business Development Agency. We're one of 13 agencies that do access to capital contracts. Procurement opportunities is what I work in with the Office of Business Centers. I do procurement acquisitions. We have 141 business stakeholders here in the United States, including Puerto Rico, Alaska, and Hawaii. I work with tribal and the Native Alaskan and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. Thank you very much. Look forward to working with you. I do work with under the graces of Milton Cochran and Greg Goodeye. Good morning. Thank you.
Hi, Milton. This is Joe Labadie from U.S. Department of Agriculture. We are with essentially supporting all recovery support functions throughout the disaster recovery operations. We primarily serve not only farmers, but folks who live in agricultural communities and in rural areas through programs that are designed to help sustain rural life, such as even things like housing repairs and so forth. So I'm happy to be here, and I can take any questions going forward.
Thanks a lot, Joe. Let's go to our state partners. Florida Commerce Representative.
Good morning. I'm Garnet Nevels. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. With Florida Commerce, I'm one of 3 deputy bureau chiefs in the Office of Long-Term Resiliency. We monitor or manage the CDBG DR and CDBG MIT funds that come in through HUD. So this is going to be very helpful information. We're looking for what the needs are in your community. We're working on our risk assessment now and our action plan for the newest funds that came in for the 2023-24 storms. So we were allocated over $900 million. So be watching for the action plan, should post middle of March. And that'll tell you the types of programs we will be running for these funds. We hear a lot of housing, a lot of infrastructure. There's other things, obviously, besides those, but those are the big ones. So I would feel like those would be the ones we probably would run, and maybe some others. We do the match program, hazard mitigation match program to FEMA's hazard mitigation grant program. So just be on the lookout for that, and I will be taking back the information to Florida Commerce so that we can complete our risk assessment. So thank you.
Thank you. I know we have a few of our career source boards represented on the call. If you just introduce yourself quickly. Maybe not.
She's here, but she hasn't gone off mute.
Okay. Are there any other state agencies on the call? Any institution of higher learning? If you do decide you want to chime in, just feel free to do that, or at least put your contact information in the chat, and we'll be happy to hear from you during our sessions throughout the day. Greg, I'm gonna turn it back over to you so we can get started with the program.
Yep. Thanks, Milton. Before we get into the discussions today, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the interagency recovery process and essentially what we're trying to do here. Essentially, the IRC, or the Interagency Recovery Coordination Process, basically it falls under the National Disaster Recovery Framework. And essentially what it does is it brings together a group of federal partners that work in conjunction with the state, with the respective state. Here it's the state of Florida, to essentially help to bring technical and technical and funding assistance to address the unmet needs in the communities that have been affected by the storms that we've talked about here, Helene and Milton. Essentially what I have to take my glasses off because I'm nearsighted, so I apologize for that, taking off and on. So the IRC process essentially brings together a great knowledge and skill set from the federal government. And what we try to do is we say we bring an integrated approach to disaster recovery. And I'll speak more about that as it relates to the notion of economic recovery, essentially. But it's a unified approach, and that's what defines the IRC process particularly. So the benefits of the IRC basically is more efficiency and more effectiveness, ultimately, to bring tangible assistance to our state, local, and rural partners across the impacted communities. Enhanced coordination amongst FEMA and the federal state partners, and helps to deploy the resources to where they are most needed. So when we talk about a recovery support function, the IRC has 6 recovery support functions built into it. Community assistance, we heard from Jim with FEMA Community Assistance. They are the long-term planning arm of FEMA. So they provide assistance to communities on a very technical basis. Economic, which is led by EDA. I'll speak more about that in a minute. Health, education, and human services. We heard from Paul Myers at HHS. Housing, which is run through HUD. Infrastructure systems, we heard from Bree at U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And natural and cultural resources run through Department of Interior. Why is this important? Well, because disasters impact all of these systems, right? And so we have to have a coordinated approach to dealing with these multifaceted impacts that come to us in the light of these hurricanes. So essentially, the recovery support functions are deployed. EDA has a mission assignment from FEMA, and we work to meet the needs of our communities. What we're doing today, we have a number of other recovery workshops scheduled across the state. But what are we trying to do here? We're trying to assess the long-term recovery needs in communities, be it housing concerns, infrastructure concerns, natural resource concerns, small business economic concerns, agricultural concerns, whatever they may be. We identify partners and resources. One of the things that we mentioned today at the beginning, and it's really important, we provided these contact sheets. These contact sheets have names of all the points of contact at the federal agencies represented here. So my name's on here for EDA and similarly others. They're designed to, you can scan the UR code, it's not a UR code, it's what was it called? QR code, sorry, not a UR code, sorry. Yeah, scan the QR code, you see what my technological prowess there. But you scan the QR code and then your phone will take you directly to the website and you can learn more information there. So as I said, just to wrap up, the RSF services really provide a great level of technical assistance. They provide resource coordination, planning support, policy, regulatory guidance, capacity building, and information sharing. So all these things are baked into it. All right, so now I'm going to talk about EDA and how we look at recovery from an economic development lens, which is very unique in the federal landscape. So I represent EDA, and I'm going to talk to you about how we bring resources to support economic recovery and resiliency, and what our mission is. So essentially, EDA is the only federal agency that focuses exclusively on economic development. We don't build housing, we don't feed the poor, we do economic development, and I'll get more into what we mean by that. We're a grant-making agency, and we call our grants investments, because we believe that when we make grants to communities, they are investments. They're investments in infrastructure, they're investments in critical systems that support economic recovery. We do this on a blue sky basis. I have discussions with communities across Florida every day about ways to improve their economies, how they're going to move the needle economically speaking, how they're going to create a more sustainable future for their economies, and of course, under disaster conditions, we're focused on disaster recovery specifically. Now, I'm not going to go through every one of these programs up here. That's not my job. My job is simply to say that EDA, like other federal agencies, has a suite of programs that can meet you at your particular need at any point in time. Economic development is a very complicated undertaking. I understand that. I've been doing it for many years. So what I mean by that is some communities may not know what they want to do economically speaking, and so we have funds to help them plan for economic strategies or economic development. We have programs that support critical infrastructure, building facilities, capacity building, and so forth. EDA has 5 investment priorities that animate our reviews. When you come to EDA, you come to EDA on a competitive merit basis. What does that mean? That means when you're applying to EDA for funding, it's a competitive funding atmosphere. So you have to make the best case for why this funding is critical to the needs of your community and how it's going to move the needle economically speaking. So EDA is focused on critical infrastructure. We know that critical infrastructure underpins economic development. If you don't have adequate roads, water systems, wastewater systems, broadband, and other critical infrastructure systems, that will impinge your ability to create a more vibrant economy. If you talk to economic development organizations across the state of Florida and across the country, you'll know that one of the top issues that animates their discussions on a day-to-day basis is workforce development. If you don't have a workforce that has the skill sets of today and the skill sets of tomorrow in terms of the new industries that are coming online in the next 3 to 5 years, then you have to meet that challenge. And the economic development organizations across the state of Florida are trying to meet that challenge on a day-to-day basis. Innovation and entrepreneurship, that's also a critical underpinning of economic development. We know that at the core of a lot of the activities of economic development means how do I create a more innovative and entrepreneurial economy, right? And I'll give you some project examples of that. When disasters hit, the 4th priority there, economic recovery and resiliency, and I'll speak more about that, is critical. So what we're trying to do is provide resources to address a twofold need. One is, if you have critical infrastructure which has been impacted by storms and by dislocation and things like that, there are resources, whether it be EDA or FEMA or U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, that can help rebuild that infrastructure. There's the other side of the coin, though. The other side of the coin is, if you look 3 to 5 years down the line, there are activities to make investments in new new infrastructure systems that will provide dividends down the line. So that's what we mean by economic resiliency. And the 5th priority for us is manufacturing. We want to help to create good-paying manufacturing jobs and to increase the supply chain capacities in our communities and increase those opportunities for manufacturing to occur. These are the eligible applicants that EDA typically works with, that I work with on a day-to-day basis. I work with the state, I work with counties, cities, special districts. Florida has a lot of special districts. I live in Florida too, and I have been affected by hurricanes, so I share Brent and Bree, their sentiments there. We work with the 10 regional planning councils in the state of Florida across the country. They're called councils of government, and they go by other names like that. We work with federally recognized Indian tribes. We work with the Great 28, the 28 community colleges across the state of Florida and universities, and we work with nonprofit organizations that are doing economic development activities. So that's the list of eligible applicants. Now I'm going to pivot to what EDA does in terms of disaster recovery. So as I mentioned earlier, we are mobilized by FEMA under the National Disaster Recovery Framework to lead the economic recovery support function. And what we're really trying to do is to help to deliver those resources to address unmet needs in those communities. And that's what we're trying to ferret out today in the discussions and the moderated discussions that we have forthcoming. The unmet needs that we typically see time and time again through hurricanes and other disruptions is lack of business and economic disaster preparedness, right? So that is certainly an issue that we see. Limited access to capital for businesses, we see that as a typical issue that pops up. Inadequate infrastructure systems that need to be rehabbed or repaired, insufficient economic diversification. I'll speak more about that in a minute, but essentially what that means is many communities in Florida, have tourism-based economies, and some of those communities have also realized that they need to diversify that tourism-based economy to support different industry sectors so that they're not subject to one industry's decline or disruption. That's what I mean by diversification. And then, of course, one of the biggest issues, and Jennifer and I were talking about that this morning, and it's no stranger to us, it's no stranger to the federal and state partners here. We understand granularly that there is limited capacity to take advantage of the resources, especially some of the federal and state resources that were here today. But I want to assure you that this is not the end of the discussion, okay? I work with EDA on a blue sky basis, so I will be continuing to have these discussions with you all when this workshop ends in the foreseeable future. So essentially what we can try to help build capacity. One of the things that EDA does, I spend time on the front end to talk to you folks about potential projects. I try to understand a couple of things, basic things. One is, what are you asking for, right? Any federal agency is going to need to know what the ask is. You have to define what the ask is. If you need additional capacity, you have to define what you mean by additional capacity. If you want to build a building, then we have to know, what that building is going to be used for, where it's going to be located, how big it is, how much it's going to cost. Those are some of the main things I'm going to ask you. And then I'm going to ask you from an economic development perspective, what are the economic outcomes of that project in terms of potential jobs to be created in private sector investment, because that's what our focus is. So EDA essentially helps to facilitate the timely assistance of federal economic assistance through our sister agencies across the country and across the state of Florida. And we work in close coordination with Margaret and her team at the Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council and the 6 counties that they represent. I want you to focus on, can you guys turn the lights out? Would you mind just, yeah, it's just hard to see, it's hard to see the slides. I appreciate that, Jennifer. I know many communities, we're very much aware that many communities are still in the recovery phase, and we understand that. And what we're here today, though, is to talk about this long-term recovery phase, right? Which is a little further out on that spectrum. And we know that that long-term recovery phase is probably going to be, in all likelihood, years. So, again, that just reemphasizes my earlier point that we will continue to have these discussions with you long after this workshop ends. And Margaret and her team create something called a comprehensive economic development strategy. What is this? This is basically a document that looks at the economy from a regional perspective. And so what are the strategic priorities that they've identified? Increase industry diversification in Southwest Florida, develop a talented workforce, recruit new businesses, and market the region's business-friendly environment while enhancing the region's high quality of life. So I keep talking about this notion about economic resiliency. What do I mean by this? It's enhancing a community's or region's ability to anticipate, withstand, and recover from shocks to the system. Shocks to the system could be natural resource shocks, could be disruptions to the economic base, could be industry leaving. In Taylor County, we were just up in Perry. The pulp mill closed down about a year and a half ago, and so that community is struggling with, creating backfilling those 700 jobs that were lost because of that pulp mill closing down. So the ways to help enhance economic resiliency is by enhancing your business retention and expansion efforts, developing new technologies, broadband, and resilient infrastructure systems, right? Diversifying the economy, and building capacity for business continuity. And the project types that EDA generally will fund, Congress appropriated significant disaster recovery dollars in December of last year that will be forthcoming to a number of the federal agencies represented here, including EDA. And these are the types of projects that we anticipate potentially funding, from a broad brush standpoint, planning for economic recovery. And I'll speak more about that in a minute. Restoring or enhancing economic infrastructure, the systems that I talked about, water, wastewater, sewer, stormwater, and things like that, supporting the business of new business and jobs. What some of you may not realize is EDA builds incubators, and we build incubators because we want to focus on innovation and entrepreneurship. We facilitate access to capital. How do we do this? We fund revolving loan funds. So in the aftermath of Hurricane Irma, we worked with DEO at the time, Florida Commerce, and we helped them capitalize the Rebuild Florida Loan Fund, which has now been fully revolved and is a permanent loan fund of $40 million at the state, and a secondary loan fund for Hurricane Michael impacts in the Panhandle, which is a $10 million revolving loan fund. Workforce, I spoke about that, and then capacity building. So now I'm gonna stop here for a moment, because I'm a visual learner. And so for me, the best way to understand is to understand the types and breadth of some of the projects that we have funded in EDA in the aftermath of similar disasters, just to give you guys a very brief understanding of some of the projects and the context in which they were brought to us. So after Hurricane Ian, City of Longwood came to us. So why did they come to us? They came to us because they have a commerce park. It's been called the Bennett Road Commerce Park. It was flooded out. It was flooded out because of Hurricane Ian flooding impacts. They had inadequate stormwater systems there. The businesses in the commerce park didn't have proper access and access to their inventories, their businesses, their workforce. And so the project was to EDA was to rehab the stormwater system along a three-quarter mile length on Bennett Road, and that project is underway as we speak. I mentioned planning for economic development. Hardee County came to us, and in Hardee County is in Central Florida, and what they did is they wanted to do a coordinated land use, transportation, and economic development strategy for their US 17 corridor, their main corridor. Why is this important? Well, because the Economic Development Department for the county wanted to know what potential sites and assets they have along this corridor, what potential sites could support manufacturing. Obviously, I live in Florida, so logistics distribution is a big industry sector, and so looking at sites for those things is really important. And doing that on a coordinated basis is really important. City of Sanford came to us. City of Sanford relies very much on tourism. So one of the assets they have is a peninsula that sits just off their downtown area, and the Marina Isle was impacted by floodwaters that topped over the access road. So the project they came to us was predicated on the need to protect and preserve this tourism asset, Marina Isle, in the city. So we're essentially helping them procure and buy a Tiger Dam system, which will prevent overflow of water on that singular access road to Marina Isle. Margaret, your friends in South and Central Florida, what they're doing is they're doing a multi-jurisdictional transportation corridor for Polk County. Again, why is this important? Because Polk County, I believe, is probably the fastest growing county in the country, if I'm not mistaken. And because it's growing so fast, they need to get out front and understand, again, Are there limitations in their transportation corridors? Are there investments they need to make over the next 3 to 5 years to accommodate that growth and to make sure that they're doing it in a way that meets the needs of their residents? Sorry, I got Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, your sister agency for the Tampa Bay region, Margaret, they do a lot of economic modeling. And so one of the things they wanted to do is increase that capacity and communication and collaboration. We talked about that this morning. How are they going to do that? They're going to be modeling the effects of a 5.0 Category 5 hurricane hitting the Tampa Bay region, and they're going to go to each of their 6 counties and have a tabletop exercise to bring together emergency managers, economic developers, small business community, and the communities themselves to enhance communication and collaboration for long-term recovery. City of Eustis came to us, again, going back to Central Florida. They're very much a tourism-based economy, but one of the things they wanted to do is they came to EDA and they said, Greg, you know, we want to know what industry sectors the city can support to further diversify the economy. We're okay with the tourism aspect, but we want to see what other opportunities there are. So we're currently funding a target industry study for them. Manatee, let's go back to Sanford again. So Sanford, and you can apply for 2 times or 3 times, it doesn't matter. So you can apply for more than one project. There's no limitation on that. City of Sanford came back to us, again, Marina Isle. In this case, the seawall around Marina Isle was completely overwhelmed by the flooding impacts. So interestingly, FEMA is paying for the reconstruction of the seawall on this portion, and EDA is paying for the reconstruction on the seawall on this portion. We're not in the same project, but that's just an example where you can have 2 federal agencies in similar or adjacent projects. The other project there, Manatee County. I mentioned about tourism. So Manatee County runs a technical college. And the Manatee County School District came to me about 1.5 years ago, and their proposition was, yes, Manatee County is very much a tourism-based economy, but we have a lot of industry sectors, aviation and aerospace-related companies that are moving into the county. What do they need? They need skilled technicians to fill jobs that they need to deploy. So they went to the state of Florida, they got funding to basically create a aviation A&P program, aviation power plant and mechanics program. They got funding from the state to do that and build a classroom. What they didn't have is a hangar so that the students that are learning the technical trades can go into the aviation repair maintenance hangar to put their skills to the test. So we're building them a hangar at the Sarasota Bradenton International Airport, just as an example. So we build workforce training facilities as well. And then Kissimmee Utility Authority came to us. Again, we work with special districts. Osceola County, as you know, went to great lengths to create something called Neo City, which is about a 500-acre high-tech commercial industrial park. The genesis for this project is the fact that they wanted to build a stronger, more vibrant, more sustainable economy, and they essentially started putting investment dollars to make that happen. They also built a semiconductor fabrication facility that is being run by Skywater Technology in coordination with Bridge right now. So the project that they came to us, and I've been to that semiconductor facility many times, the premise was when you're building semiconductor chips, because the machinery is so finely calibrated, if they have an electrical brownout or if the power goes out for a microsecond, they essentially have to recalibrate and retool those machines. And it's very costly and disruptive to the manufacturing process. So their project to us was, we want to bury our power lines adjacent to the semiconductor facility so that we can have redundant power 24/7. So that was the premise for the project, and that project is currently underway. And then the last projects I want to show you, again, just to show you the breadth and depth of projects that have been funded. In Henry County, we funded a project in Henry County. Henry County, of course, is agricultural heartland. And what they came to EDA and to me was to talk about the fact that they want to create a more agricultural, high value added economy. They figure they wanted to see the feasibility of developing an agricultural innovation park. But before they could actually put money and to make that determination, they wanted to see if something like that is feasible. So EDA is helping to pay for a feasibility study to give them that information that they would need to make the decision to potentially move forward with that project. Henry County, in the aftermath of Hurricane Irma, was severely impacted, as communities all across Florida were. Their communication systems were severely hampered, which meant that basically their ATMs, their point of sale systems, their cash registers were inoperable. They couldn't conduct commerce. So the project they came to EDA to fund is a broadband feasibility study, and the broadband feasibility study, again, would give them the information to make a determination that, yes, they need to support broadband deployment in the county. And I know our friends at Florida Commerce have stood up an Office of Broadband, and they're working on those kind of implementation projects as we speak. So obviously, broadband is becoming a crucial underpinning for of infrastructure resiliency. And Southwest Florida, again, in the aftermath of Hurricane Irma, came to us, and they wanted to improve the viability of the small and medium-sized farmers and the food systems that they produce in Southwest Florida. And so they came to us to support a regional sustainability study for those food systems and producers in place. And so the intent of this very quick whirlwind here is to just demonstrate that we can meet you where you are in your needs for long-term recovery. We don't know what those are, and we're not going to project our needs on, Charlotte County or any of the impacted regions here. You all have to make those determinations, and so what we're trying to achieve here is to have that initial discussion, which will give us insights as to what direction you folks want to go and how to get there. And I have business cards, and I'm on the contact list as well. But I think I'm going to now turn it back to Margaret.